Was Junior ever respected? It's the kind of Sopranos question that looks simple on the surface and then knots itself the moment you start tugging. Because what does respected even mean in that world? Is it fear, people lowering their eyes when you walk past? Is it obedience, orders acted on without delay? Is it status, titles, houses, tables, and the right to sit at the head of them? Or is it something quieter, the acknowledgement, even by your enemies, that you were the real thing? With Corrado Jr. Soprano, every version appears and every version slips. He's revered and ridiculed, obeyed and ignored, crowned and neutered, feared and gently babysat. So the real inquiry isn't a simple yes or no. It's a map of competing currencies: position, myth, competence, age, fear, family, and the slow erosion of power in a world that mistakes ceremony for substance. Let's begin with the obvious. Junior is a made man from an era that predates Tony's ascendance. He's not a pretender. He paid dues when the neighborhood was a different place, when men like him got envelopes for making ports run smoothly and corners stay quiet. The old-timers in Newark and Elizabeth know that. The union guys know that. Even New York knows that. In the old world of memory and myth, Junior's name carries weight, not the weight of genius or profit, but the weight of time. Time itself is a credential in their culture. You lasted. You didn't rat. You learned the rules, internalized the rhythms, and stayed alive long enough to play elder statesman. That counts, maybe not enough to command unquestioned authority in the present tense, but enough to be given deference on the sidewalk and a chair at the table. In that narrow, ceremonial sense, yes, Junior is respected. But if respect is practical rather than ceremonial, if we define it as the ability to impose, well, Junior's ledger is spotted from the start. Watch what happens anytime his will collides with the practical interests of the crew that actually earns. He can fume and lecture and appeal to tradition, but the money and the muscle follow a different gravity. He discovers, almost in real time, that respect without teeth means you could veto a song but not a strategy. This is the first fracture in his world. Junior has positional dignity without positional leverage. He has the title that commands the toast, not the title that moves the trucks. And yet, in the early going, there is fear. He is not cute. He is not harmless. He can be vindictive, sudden, and, crucially, petty. Petty violence is its own form of authority. It keeps men from picking at the edges of your robe. You push too far and Junior will do something small but irreversible. In a social ecosystem where small humiliations escalate into life-altering acts, that's not a joke. It's policy. So there is an authentic strain of fear-based respect around him, a habit of caution born out of the knowledge that he is capable of ordering a solution with a phone call and an old grievance. But fear-driven respect has a half-life. It requires fresh demonstrations. Junior's problem is that the world stops supplying him with believable demonstrations. He's aging. He's watched. He's arrested. He's paraded. He's put on the defensive. The state takes a man's swagger more effectively than any rival can. A title you can defend privately is one thing. A title you have to defend publicly through the front doors of a courthouse is something else entirely. Once the feds treat you like a mascot for a historic sweep, your men don't stop calling you boss. They just start adding quotation marks in their tone. Consider the feuds that expose his limits. Junior's ego is a hair trigger attached to a lifetime of being told he was second tier. Second to Jackie, second to Tony's father, second to anyone whose presence dimmed his own. That lifelong sting births decisions that aren't strategic so much as they are corrective movements to repair the story he tells about himself. And every time he tries to repair that story, he bumps into the reality that his own people are choosing a different protagonist. Respect doesn't survive long when it has to run uphill against a crew's intuition about who the future belongs to. There's another axis where Junior does deserve credit. He understands the code. Not the romanticized version, but the practical etiquette of mob governance, how to be seen making an effort to consult, how to acknowledge another man's stake without conceding your own. When he checks boxes, men relax. They may not agree with his judgment, but they recognize his fluency. That fluency is a form of respect too. You may be wrong, but at least you're playing the right sport by the right rules. In a crime family, process often matters as much as outcome because process is how pride is managed without gunfire. Junior knows the process. However, the ground shifts under him in 3 ways he can't control. First, the economy of the family changes. The modern money, the real money, is not in the rackets Junior built his identity around. It's in scams that require a different temperament, quicker, looser, more corporate, less ceremonial. The men who excel at this speak a slightly different language, read a different clock, and don't nod automatically to the oldest guy in the room. Junior's brand of wisdom is partially denominated in currencies that are no longer accepted. Second, the culture of violence changes, not in its essence, but in its theatrics. Once upon a time, a quiet threat carried weight because everyone had seen the aftermath. In the show's present, the aftermath is often deferred, negotiated, or outsourced. Violence becomes litigation adjacent. The modern risk is surveillance, not retribution. That means a man like Junior, who communicates authority by willingness to do irreversible things, gets framed as a liability rather than an anchor. Respect recalibrates around risk tolerance. Third, age isn't just a number here, it's a storyline. The outfit treats time as a ledger of earned authority until time starts writing into the body. When memory blows fuses and routines fracture into confusion, the mystique collapses. The same men who once protected your pride now protect you from your own shoelaces. Respect can survive pity, but it can't stand upright under it. The moment you become someone who must be handled, your people will find a more stable object for their seriousness. So where, in all of that, does Junior still command the old respect? Look at how the rank and file speak to him when the room is small and the stakes are low. There's a way they soften as they approach him, the way you might soften for a strict grandfather who swung hard in his prime. They modulate their tone less because they fear him than because they respect the memory of the man he was. Memory respect is real. It imposes real behavioral change. They won't mock him to his face. They won't contradict him outright. And they will offer him little dignities. But it is still backward-facing. They are honoring a museum piece they once feared on the street. To answer the question honestly, we need to separate Junior's constituencies. Among older Jersey guys who came up in the same era, Junior is respected as a bona fide, a man who did the time in the trenches. They might roll their eyes at his pettiness or his jealousies, but they don't doubt his legitimacy. He's not a TV gangster cosplaying a tradition for the clout. He is the tradition. They can't take that away without also erasing themselves. Among the newer earners and the practical operators, men who do the deals that keep the present flush, Junior's respect is toggled. Yes, Uncle June in public. What does Tony say in private? Here, the calculus is simple. Respect that interferes with revenue gets demoted. They don't disrespect him, they disintermediate him. That's the modern form of disrespect. You route around a man until his authority shrinks to the shape of his ego. Among civilians adjacent to the life, the doctors, the lawyers, the restaurant owners, the cousins who come in for holidays, Junior holds an odd nobility. He is the easy story, the old Don, the real Italian, the living postcard from a time when hierarchy felt like an institution and not a negotiation. Civilians tend to respect iconography more than function, and Junior is pure iconography. They see him and think, that's what it looks like. In their gaze, respect survives, perhaps even thrives. Among New York heavyweights, what exists is not so much respect as recognition, a nod to longevity, a salute to an equal opposite number in an adjacent territory. They don't defer, they acknowledge. They like their own stories about themselves too much to grant him anything beyond that. But even a nod matters in that ecosystem. It means, we know you, we count you, and if we drop your name, we expect the earth to vibrate a little between Newark and Brooklyn. That counts less than deference, more than indifference. Among his own family, Tony, Janice, Bobby, the orbit of nieces and nephews, respect is emotionally entangled. Tony grows up in the shadow of these men, absorbing the mythology of tough uncles and decisive Sundays. He knows Junior's strengths and his frailties, his principle and his pettiness. Tony's respect for Junior is both protective and strategic, the way you honor a bloodline while rearranging the furniture in the house. When Tony chooses to treat Junior as the patriarch, he's partly preserving the facade for the outside world and partly doing an act of mercy inside the family. Leave the old man a crown to polish. Is that respect? It's close enough to pass for it in a room full of men who would rather not admit how much of their lives are rituals designed to protect male pride. We also have to talk about the decision that defines Junior's public arc when he co-signs a move against Tony. On one level, nothing could be less respectable than trying to burn your own blood for the sake of your pride. On another level, in their world, the act reads as authentically Roman. Power is not a birthright. It's a seat won and defended. Junior believes he is defending the legitimacy of the old order against a talented upstart who undermines it with back channel control. It's a losing calculation, but it is not an unserious calculation. If you grant that to him, if you strip the act of its family betrayal and view it as politics, there's a harsh, feral coherence to it. Some men in that world, silently, respect coherence, even when they condemn the play. He did what he thought he had to. Respect, in this cold sense, is grudging acknowledgement that a man acted in a way consistent with his reading of the code. Still, Junior's greatest enemy is not Tony. It's time. Time robs him of the ability to convert memory respect into present tense authority. House arrest replaces restaurant booths. Doctors replace conciliary. The courthouse replaces the clubhouse. The rituals change, weekly pill sorters instead of weekly envelopes, and respect is not built for that translation. The crew can pretend the man is what he was for a holiday dinner or a wake, but the day-to-day rhythms of command require a kind of momentum he can't simulate anymore. When momentum stops, men drift toward the strongest center of gravity. That isn't Junior. It is easy, especially from the outside, to conclude that Junior is a punchline by the end, a confused man in a chair, repeating stories that get the facts wrong. But that reading is impatient. Even at the end, there is a dark durability to him. The mind goes, the impulse remains. The old prickliness appears like lightning in a dwindling storm, flashes of temper, flashes of entitlement, flashes of an ego that refuses to downgrade itself just because the body says so. People respond to those lightning moments subconsciously. They stand straighter, speak slower, accommodate. That is respect, however faint, the residue of a learned behavior around a man who, for decades, made it dangerous not to behave that way. So was Junior ever respected? Yes, structurally, ceremonially, historically, and episodically. He was respected as a vessel of the old code. He was respected as a man who had paid and kept paying until he sat atop the resume pile. He was respected as a legitimate, if limited, practitioner of mob process. He was respected as a figurehead worth preserving to stabilize the narrative. He was respected as memory by men who preferred to remember the world as it was when they first felt powerful. But he was not respected in the specific way that defines the show's true kings, the way that fuses fear, money, vision, and affection into a single gravitational field. Tony, whatever else you say about him, holds that fusion for long stretches. Richie has violent charisma but lacks unifying gravity. Ralphie has earning power but radiates contempt. Johnny Sack has polish and menace and the reach of New York. Carmine Sr. has the myth of a monarch whose silence counts as a sentence. Junior never quite synthesizes the package. His respect is plural and compartmentalized. It lives in pockets. It shows up in rituals. It fades when a decision has to be made in the next 15 minutes and men reach for a phone that isn't his. There's one more angle worth pinning down because The Sopranos always leaves you with one uncomfortable question. What were people respecting when they respected Junior? Were they respecting him, or were they respecting their own need to believe in the order of things? Men like Paulie and Silvio and even Tony metabolize the world through hierarchy. Hierarchy keeps anxiety low. When Junior's around, acting like a patriarch, a piece of them can relax into the fiction that the system is intact and timeless. Respect for Junior is sometimes a psychological convenience, a way of persuading themselves that there's an unbroken chain back to something sacred in their subculture. This isn't fake. It's how cultures sustain themselves by re-enchanting certain figures with a portion of the tribe's need for continuity. Junior absorbs that enchantment, carries it as well as he can, and eventually can't carry it anymore. But even when he can't, the habit of respect lingers, like muscle memory. So, whoa, who's Junior ever respected? If your definition demands perfect coherence, fear and love and money, and obedience and admiration in a single package, then no, he never holds that crown uncontested. If your definition allows for the real-world mess of how grown men in a decaying industry calibrate deference, some ritual, some nostalgia, some practical caution, some genuine regard, then yes, emphatically, he was respected, repeatedly and in multiple registers, even as those registers kept changing. He is respected the way a lighthouse is respected after the port has moved upstream, as a landmark that once guaranteed safe passage, still visible, still useful to memory, still able to influence behavior, even if the modern ships now take a different route. Maybe the cleanest answer is this: Junior is respected as a noun, not as a verb. As a noun, he's respectable. A category, an institution, a figure? As a verb, to respect, present tense, with all the weight of compliance and consequence. He loses ground year by year until what remains are gestures, not obedience, warmth, not fear, ritual, not rule. Not rule. Rule, that distinction is the essence of his arc and the show's larger thesis about power. If it isn't moving, it's dying. Junior's respect, like his life, becomes a museum exhibit that people still pay to see, still photograph, still speak about in hushed tones, even as they march back out into a world that runs on newer engines and answers to newer names. And yet, admit it, whenever he enters a room in those early days, part of you straightens up too. Not just because of the threats he represents, but because he radiates the last credible rays of a disappearing sun. You don't have to like him to respect that. You only have to understand that in The Sopranos, respect isn't a medal you pin on your chest, it's a moving weather system. And for a long time, Corrado Soprano could still make the air change when he walked by.